Welcome to Chapter 2 of See How to Program, Introduction to C Programming. So in this chapter, we'll learn how to write some simple C programs, use simple input and output statements, learn about the basic data types in C, a little bit about how memory is organized, arithmetic operators to work with, numbers and numeric data types, the rules of precedence of those arithmetic operators, how to express them in C programs, and a brief introduction to simple decision-making statements or control flow statements. So let's start with a very simple C program similar to what we looked at when we first tried out the IDE, the Integrated Development Environment Visual Studio, that we'll be using together with this course. So here's a very simple sample program, almost identical to the one that we tried out. So we'll walk through this line by line. So this is a very simple 9 lines of code. And let's see the first 2 lines. Actually, some of these lines are highlighted in green, and parts of them at least in green. And notice over here, this one, this one, this one. These are actually not lines of code. Basically, anything that you see over here in green is what we call comments. So these are really just comments that you can add to your code, to your source code, to make it easier to read and understand. The other lines are really lines of code that we're interested in here. So comments can be inserted using these 2 forward slashes, like we saw on these first 2 lines. And you can really put the comments not just at the beginning of the program, but anywhere in the middle of the program, really anywhere, even on lines that contain part code, like over here. So you can see that these parentheses are in black. That can be followed by a comment that begins with these 2 forward slashes and really goes until the end of the line. So you can't have code coming after the comment again when you insert those comments using 2 forward slashes. There's also another way you can insert, another syntax. You can insert multi-line comments. So these comments that we just saw, they extend to only 1 line unless you put these double slashes on each of those lines. Another thing you can do is you can include what we call multi-line comments. Basically a forward slash followed by an asterisk or star character, and anything you write after that, even if it spans over multiple lines, will be considered a comment until you close it with a star followed by a forward slash again. So it's kind of like putting your comments in parentheses. So this is like the opening comment and the closing comment characters. We'll try it out. After that, we get to the first real line of code, which is this one. Hash include, and then inside of these angular brackets, we have stdio.h. Any line of code that begins with hash include is something called a preprocessor directive. This is basically an instruction to the compiler that interprets that, not, I shouldn't say interpret, but that goes through your code to compile the executable program. So these are basically instructions to the preprocessor specifically. In this case, you'll see that the code that you write will be using different functions and features that you have available within the language, different functions, and those different functions are organized into different sets of libraries. This library over here, stdio.h, is called the standard IO library, and standard input output library, and it basically contains functions that let you print stuff to screen, or let you take input from the user through the keyboard and use that input in the program. And in this very simple program that we're looking at right now, what's happening is we have only one line of code in which we are printing out this message, welcome to C. So we're doing some output, and that's why we need this particular library for that. Let me also jump back to the code again. You'll also see that we have a line 4 over here, which is blank line. Doesn't contain anything. Now, blank lines have absolutely no function. You can leave it out. You can put in 10 blank lines. It'll make no difference to the code itself, to the program itself. It's followed by another comment line, this one describing what's coming next. Function main begins program execution. So let's talk a little bit about that. So this is the line of code after the comment. And for the moment, I'm not going to explain everything that this means, but sections of code are organized inside of blocks called functions. Now, function names can be pretty much whatever you want them to be, but this particular function over here called main is special because the main function is where the execution of your program begins. So this is whatever function is called main, and there can only be one main function in your project, in your program. This is where execution begins. And this has to be part of every C program. Now, before and after main, we have something else written over here. We have over here something that says int. We'll talk about that in a little bit. This is basically something called the return type of the function. Basically specifies, so functions can basically do work, and at the end of performing that work, that task, they produce an output. That output can be, you have to specify what type of output is produced by a certain function. In this case, the main function is said to be producing output of type int. Int is a type of data. Int is actually short for integer. On the other side, it says void inside these round parentheses. And void means no data, basically. Again, we'll talk more about void when we get to data types, native data types of C, in C. And in this place, we can specify any the type of data that is being given, that this function main takes as input. So basically the input to whatever function, whatever work this function is performing. In this case, we're not taking any input. This function does not take any input, which is why you have void in this place. So this will make more sense as we move along, but just remember, int means this function can or does return an integer type value. Void means inside the round parenthesis means that it's not taking anything as input. So void in the parenthesis here means that main does not receive any information. All right, and after that we come to the first real line of code inside the main function. Every function begins with these curly braces or curly parentheses and ends with a closing, with a matching closing bracket. Where you exactly put that doesn't really matter. You can put it on the same line as the name of the function, or you can put it underneath it. Either way it works. And anything inside, any lines of code between the opening and closing parentheses, anything in here, that code basically belongs to whatever function we have up here. In our example, that would be the main function. Now in our case, the first line that we see over here is this printf, and printf itself, as you can see, it's kind of structured the same way as main. We have a name over here, and we have these round braces, something in between here. So printf is another function, but this printf function is available to us as part of that standard IO library that we included using the preprocessor directive at the top. And what this printf function does is it will print out what you provide in the argument over here. In this case, it'll print out a message. It says welcome to C, exclamation mark. And you'll see that over here we have a /n. It has a special meaning that we'll talk about. And it's basically printing out a string of characters. And the string of characters starts wherever we put these double quotes and ends where we put the closing double quotes. So this series of characters, we have a different name for that. We also call a series of characters like that a string, or a string of characters. And the start and the end of a string of characters like that is marked by these quotation marks. Sometimes a string like that is also called a message or literal. Okay. Now about that /n over here, that has a special meaning. This will not be printed out as you see it over here. It will not be printed out as a backward /n. The backward slash character in C has a special function. It is called an escape character. It means that the character that comes after the slash specifies a special action, a special function that will be performed to the string. In this case, when the backward slash is followed by an n, this means new line, means break the line, move on to the next line. So when I show you how to run this code and what it does, this will become a little clearer. So this backward slash is called an escape character. When you couple it with an n together, it means new line. Now, instead of just /n, we sometimes use other characters after that backward slash, a /t, which means insert a tab character, like the tab that you have on your keyboard. Now, /t, often on most systems, it will put in a space equal to 4 space characters. But depending on the configuration of the system, sometimes can be as much as 8 spaces. And in other situations, it can even be something as little as 2 spaces. Now, which one it is can depend on the system on which your code is running at the time. Usually, as a rule of thumb, when you're formatting output, text output, you should avoid using /t. It's usually simply, if you know precisely how many spaces you want, it's simply better to use to insert as many space characters in the string. Another escape sequence is /a. And what that does is it'll produce a beep sound. Or in a few decades ago, this used to produce a ring sound on the bell that was part of computers. So over here, nowadays, it's just a beep. Occasionally, you will want to print an actual / character as part of your string. When you want to do that, you can't just put in a single slash, because the compiler will attempt to read whatever character comes next and will try to interpret that as an escape sequence. And if that character over here does not make sense, you will get an error or may see some nonsense output. So when you want to print just a single / character, what you have to do is you actually have to use two / characters. Basically, an / has special meaning to insert a single / character. You've also seen that if you have a string, the start of the string and the end of the string are indicated by, or are denoted, are marked by double quotes, and in between you have text. You have a string. What if you want to print a double quote character inside of a string? Well, to do that, you again have to use this escape sequence, / double quote. This will insert a double quote in the string as part of the text. We'll see that in the demo, so don't be too confused by that right now. We'll try that out. Okay. So let me jump ahead, something slightly more interesting. So I'll show you how to compile that. And it's not necessary that you use only a simple printf statement. You can have multiple printf statements, of course. You can have multiple printf statements to print a single line of text, like we see over here. So this is a slight modification of the program that we just saw. This one we have two printf statements. The first one prints welcome, an empty space, followed by 2 space C !/n. Now when you run this will still give you the same output. And the reason is that this printf statement does not end with a /n, meaning that whatever string this prints out will be followed immediately by the string put out by the next printf statement. And you can also do the reverse. You can have a single printf statement print out multiple lines of text. And you can do that by inserting the new line escape sequence inside the single string of the single printf statement that you have. Here's an example of that. So the same message, welcome to C, but this time we want to put the words welcome, the word to, and C ! On separate lines, so that the output will look something like this. And you can print out these 3 lines of text, three lines with strings on them, using a single printf statement. And the way you break from one line to or go to the next line is by inserting /n or new line escape sequences wherever you want to break to the next line. So I'll show you a demo of this and an extension of what you can do with what we've seen so far in the next video. And after that, we'll move on to receiving input from the user of a program.